Welcome to the Driving the World podcast series. I'm your host, Cully Holland. Today we have Don Congdon, a corporate trainer, and we will be discussing drives, control, and automation communication. Hey, Don, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Cully. Nice to be back.
So we're going to talk about drives, control, and automation, maybe some communication and controls that go along with those. So when I say drives, control, and automation, really more commonly, VFD, variable frequency drive, inverter, that's really what we're talking about. So what are some ways that we could communicate or control these VFDs?
Well, there are a lot of different ways you can control a VFD. The simplest is often with a keypad, which is right on the front panel of the VFD. Some VFDs have built-in keypads, some it's an optional accessory. Gives you just usually a few buttons and lets you do very basic control. So that, of course, is your easiest approach. But there are certainly others. Another is called terminal control, or it's sometimes known as binary control. That's another way to do it. And then finally, there's the most sophisticated, which is fieldbus control.
Awesome. So we have keypads, which are self-explanatory, and we have our binary or terminal control and fieldbus, which sounds like it's going to maybe be a little more complex, not complicated.
Yeah, it is a little more complex because you've got extra components involved in there, like PLCs, for example.
Well, let's go ahead and just figure out what a PLC is, and then we're going to move right into, let's start with terminal or binary control.
Okay, let's define a few of those terms, get those out of the way. We use the term controller and PLC kind of interchangeably. PLC stands for Programmable Logic Controller. It's an industrial control computer. It's designed specifically for controlling different kinds of machines in an industrial setting. PLCs have been around for a long time, decades, so they're kind of specialized controllers. There are other kinds of controllers, but again, they're really just computers that are dedicated to industrial control tasks. So we tend to use those terms kind of interchangeably. Fieldbus. What is a fieldbus? It's an industrial network. You're probably familiar with networks in the office environment or the home. You have Wi-Fi at home usually. Most offices do. They also probably have wired networks that you plug into. A fieldbus is really almost exactly the same thing, except it's industrial strength. It's designed to be used in the harsher environment of a factory, for example. But it does exactly the same thing as the network does in your home. It connects devices together, allows them to communicate.
Easy enough. So fieldbus is just communication in an industrial setting. So let's just take one step back and let's go ahead and discuss a little bit of terminal and binary control. So where does that fit in before we dive into the fieldbus? So some pros, some cons, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, terminal control is more sophisticated than keypad control because a lot of times you don't want people to have to walk up to a VFD and push a button to make it run. So what terminal control is, we sometimes call it a digital control because it uses on-off signals to tell the VFD what to do. Most VFDs have at least a few digital inputs, and these can be wired up to switches, they can be wired up to buttons, they can be wired up even to different kinds of control computers that have some digital outputs on them. And the idea is you configure the VFD so that it will do certain things when digital signals arrive. There might be a signal to tell it to start the motor and turn it clockwise, or there might be another signal to tell it to rotate counterclockwise. And there may be a few signals that will pick specific speeds. We call these fixed set points. Most VFDs, you can program a few into them. For example, our Movi C VFDs, they have 6 different fixed set points that you can code into the VFD. And when the right digital signal arrives, the VFD turns at that speed. So it's a notch up from keypad control, but it's still very, very simple and straightforward.
And I mean, simplistic, we love that as an advantage. Also sounds like it could be easy to troubleshoot, which I mean, if you have on, off, 0, 1, I'm guessing that's where the binary term comes from. It sounds like a really good option for some customers and folks out there in the field. Is there anything people should keep an eye out? I don't really want to say a disadvantage, but something that's a little bit of a con or just something people should be aware of when using this terminal control.
Yes, terminal control mode, as I've said, is really nice because it's easy to set up. It doesn't require a whole lot to get it working. Virtually anybody can set up terminal control. You don't have to be a programmer or anything to be able to work with it. But the kind of downside is it is a little bit limited what you can do because you only have a certain number of digital inputs and you can only do a certain amount of things with those. So in a simple situation where you're not doing anything other than maybe running it at a few speeds, doing basic motion, it's perfectly adequate. But if you need to do something more sophisticated, you need a whole range of speeds, you want to change behavior for specific situations, or maybe have multiple operating modes for that VFD, then terminal control really just doesn't have what it takes, and you have to move up a notch to fieldbus control.
I was going to say, you took the words right out of my mouth. So once we start getting those more complex motion profiles or just a little more control of the application, I was going to assume that's where fieldbus comes in. So let's talk a little bit about fieldbus. Once again, some of the advantages, and if there are any, maybe one or two of the cons or just things folks might want to keep an eye out for.
Yes, the advantage of fieldbus control is it's extremely powerful. You get enormous flexibility. Now, of course, a lot depends on the capabilities of your VFD on the other side of it, but if you have a powerful VFD, like one of our MoVC VFDs, you are essentially sending it commands from your controller, your PLC, over the fieldbus to the VFD, telling it what to do. And you can send whatever speed you want. You can tell it to accelerate or decelerate at different rates. You can do all kinds of specific motion operations. You can do really sophisticated things like positioning. You can do all the things associated with positioning, like homing the drive and getting everything in just the right state to make it do something very powerful. So that is really the advantage of fieldbus control. And the advantage as well, another advantage to that, is you can change things easily because it's all being controlled by your PLC program. So just by changing your code, you can change the operation of the setup. Now, that said, that leads right into kind of the downside. I said the magic word, programming.
Yep.
You've got to have somebody who can program your PLC. So someone who's a PLC programmer codes the behavior of the VFD in one of the 5 standard PLC programming languages. And happily, there are a lot of people out there in industry who are very at home with this, and that's not a big deal. But if you haven't really interacted with that side of industrial control, you do have to get into that to do fieldbus control.
Well, there are two sides to every coin. So we're gaining a lot of advantages, flexibility, customization, and being able to change what the VFD is doing itself, which I know a lot of folks like being able to change because a lot of times the applications change. But the other side of that coin is someone's got to be comfortable working with PLCs, the controllers, and the VFDs.
Yes.
So forgive me, but when we said fieldbus, I didn't know how many we had. And you quickly mentioned that there's different types. I don't know if we can get into that today, but if you'd be willing to join me, maybe we could have another podcast talking about those.
Yeah, we can talk about the different fieldbus types. There are quite a few of them out there, and SEW-EURODRIVE supports many standards, so we will definitely cover that next time because that is a big topic.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today and can't wait to see you again.
Thank you.